Alright guys, alright, let's start another Coinex weekly news. And this week couldn't have started better. We had two very important news for the market that may have triggered the long-awaited rally. On Monday, $2.2 trillion added to the US stock market. When we see the Fear and Greed Index, we see that the market is back to the grid. The last time we were on these levels was in October. So, greed is driving the US market. Not only the US market, but the crypto market too. And the question is, what caused all this greed in the market? Tariffs, always them. United States and China made a deal. Not a trade deal, and we will talk about that later. But it raised the spirits of the market, and it was a surprise, because it was the first meeting and they reached an agreement. Another surprise was the slowdown in inflation in the United States, in the biggest event on the economic calendar this week. But, like everyone else, we also want to know about Bitcoin. And today, Bitcoin is on a red day to the market. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that because Bitcoin is still above $100,000. $100,000! And this quarter, Bitcoin delivered us 25%. And it doesn't end there because Trump said market will go higher. And now we already know how that works, right? So if you are a bear, please behave yourself or don't participate in the party. Please, bears, behave and see how the market is skyrocketing. You can't do anything to stop that train. And in today's video, we'll talk about the trade deal, we'll talk about the inflation and Bitcoin. Who is buying Bitcoin now? Because we have a surprising data I will show you in this video. And in the end of this video, of course, we see the chart of Bitcoin. So let's enjoy. And my name is Kyle, and if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. And let's start with the trade deal. Breaking, US announces China trade deal in Geneva. Let's listen, Scott Bessent.
There was no sense of anxiety. There was a sense of moving forward. There was a sense of mutual respect. There was a sense that we had shared interests. But I have seen what's going on in the Chinese economy. We can see what's going on with the shipments to the U.S. And again, we are the deficit country. Historically, the deficit country has a better negotiating position.
So they made a deal. And for me, it was a surprise because it was the first meeting in a short space of time. But Greer has the answer for this question.
Pointed out a very constructive 2 days. It's important to understand how quickly we were able to come to agreement, which reflects that perhaps the differences were not so large as maybe thought. That being said, there was a lot of groundwork that went into these 2 days. Just remember why we're here in the first place. The United States has a massive $1.2 trillion trade deficit. So the president declared a national emergency and imposed tariffs. And we're confident that the deal we struck with our Chinese partners will help us to work toward resolving that national emergency.
Perhaps the differences were not so large as maybe thought. I thought the difference would be as big as possible because we are talking about the biggest US trade deficit in the world, with China $270 billion. So this is huge. This is the biggest and this is the most important trade deal ever. And they made it in a weekend. And all the markets thought it wouldn't be happen because we are seeing here just 20% of the market was betting that this agreement would happen before June. But they did it. So what is this agreement about? And Secretary Scott Bessent will resume this deal for us.
We have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause and substantially moved down the tariff levels. Both sides on the reciprocal tariffs will move their tariffs down 115%.
So That's it. This is the trade deal. This should be the most important deal in the world because the United States has his most trade deficit against China. So they need to sit down and talk about that. But let's recap. United States called the world and said, we need to tariffs everyone in the world. We need to reset the deal. And they put tariffs. And now they announces that they are pausing tariffs against China. This is the deal? This is not the deal. For me, it looks like someone blinked first. But let's try to understand what they did. First, US and China to cut tariffs, easing trade tensions. So, of course, this easing trade tensions and the market love it. S&P poised to recover loss since April, Nasdaq jumped too, and the stock market jumped. The trade war has stalled US-China trade and hurt business. This deal raises hopes of avoiding the worst economic fallout. Of course, this is the first chapter of the deal. This is not the deal because last week they called the world and announced it. We have an important announcement. We made a deal. I told you in the last video. They made a deal with UK where they have a surplus in the trade. So what kind of deal is that? And now with the most important country that they need to make a deal, they announces the deal is remove the first tariffs they put against it. So let's see. Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods drops to 10% from 125. A separate 10%, a 20% fentanyl related tariff stays in place. So now United States charges China 30%, 10 from here and 20 from fentanyl. And about the fentanyl, let's see here. China has agreed to stop fentanyl, second Trump. In the next few days, we can see this drops to 10%. And China cuts its retaliatory tariffs to 10% from 105. The cuts are temporary, lasting 9 days as talks continue. So we can see here that this is not a trade deal. This is just an announcement of the pause in the tariffs or the start of a trade deal. And Besant confirms it. Phase 1 trade deal with China offered a template. And that's it. This is the template. They didn't make a trade deal yet. It will come. And as I said last week, this is hard. This is difficult. The trade deal will be difficult. That they combine all the wishes of each country have. So let's see. Besant asked if we'll meet with China again. Imagine we will meet China in the next few weeks. So they will continue the talk. And Trump said, we'll speak to Xi, the president of China, at end of week maybe. So in the next few days or weeks, maybe you can see this call happen. But Trump said the word that. Trump says, we achieved a total reset with China. Let's see the next 9 days what will happen. But now the market is in love with it. Because in the first place, what caused the troubles in the market was the tariffs. And now Trump paused tariffs against the world. And now pause against China that they can make a deal. So let's hope for the success of this agreement so the market can soar again. And Trump said many other deals coming in. And Secretary Hassett said, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has briefed me on about 24 deals he and US Trade Representative Greer are working on. And Trump to announce new trade deal after Middle East trip. This is huge. This is very nice for the market because all the troubles that they are facing now came from the tariffs. And removing the tariffs, the trade deals being made, it's a reason for the market to celebrate. And in the meantime, Trump is making big deals, not trade deals, but strategic economic partnership in the Middle East. First, with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia to invest $600 billion in the United States. And the prince said he's working to increase US investments to $1 trillion. Not only Saudi Arabia, but Qatar wants to invest in the United States. President Trump secures $1.2 trillion economic commitment with Qatar. This is huge. This is great news for the United States. And finally, on tariffs, we can see that the fear of a recession is diminishing. On the caution market, the end of April, we had 70% chance of a recession, but now it drops to 37%. And Goldman Sachs reduced US recession odds to 35%, and now they are looking for new targets. Goldman Sachs raised S&P 500 to 12-month target to 6,500. So it's a lot. Now, can we say that the market is on risk on mode? And the second positive news came from USA again. Now, CPI inflation came and was a great result, surprising the market because it was below expectations. April CPI inflation falls to 2.3%, below expectations of 2.4%. Core CPI inflation was 2.8%, in line with expectations of 2.8%. This marks the third straight monthly decline in headline inflation. Inflation continues to go down despite the trade war. And we can see in this data that the tariffs impact, but not in a higher ground, as we can see. Let's see. In the last few months, we can see the decline of the CPI data. Okay, we can see that. And Charlie Bilelo brings us what is inside this data. So pause the video to read all this data over here. But Charlie Bilelo brings us positive news about the inflation. Overall, US CPI moved down to 2.3% in March, the lowest level since February 2021. US core CPI, true. So what this tells us that the inflation in the United States come back to the levels that started the pandemic. So it's great news. If we have a higher inflation, we need to have a higher rate to control this inflation. But if the inflation is cooling down, the Fed can cut the rates. So are all the cards in the table for the Fed to cut interest rates? I don't know, but Trump is determined to help lower inflation even further. And he posts most important impactful Trump statement of our time. So once again, go to Trump Social and read all this, or pause the video to read all the posts. But what in summary we have here? President Trump will be signing an executive order to reduce drug prices by 30 to 8%. So this is very big. This is a huge news from American people. And he explains.
But starting today, the United States will no longer subsidize the health care of foreign countries, which is what we were doing. We're subsidizing others' health care. Countries where they paid a small fraction of what for the same drug that what we pay many, many times more for, and will no longer tolerate profiteering and price gouging from Big Pharma, but again.
And Caroline explains again.
The United States of America is less than 5% of the world's population, yet we purchase 75% of Big Pharma's profits. We pay an astronomical amount in comparison to other countries around the world. So the president is signing an executive order today that is going to implement most favored nations drug pricing and is going to reduce the cost of drugs in this country by more than half at least. America is going to pay a better rate and a fairer rate to the rest of the world. That's what the American people deserve. This is huge news. And also, I will add, we know that healthcare costs and drug prices were the #1 driver of Biden inflation. So not only are we bringing those down, but we are ending Biden inflation once and for all.
And that's great news for Americans, especially those who need medication. And it puts even more pressure on Powell to cut interest rates. And Trump keeps up the pressure. No inflation and price of gasoline and energy are practically everything else are down. The Fed must lower the rate. What is wrong with too late Powell, not fair to America, which is ready to blossom? And if we remember, Powell said that they don't need to see inflation coming back to 2% to cut interest rates. Let's recap.
Chair Pal, Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. You said you want to see further progress on inflation. Given that households appear to be unhappy with the elevated level of prices, do you believe the committee should wait until inflation has fallen back to target to cut rates again?
No, I wouldn't say that. we've never said we need to be all the way at target to reduce rates. At any time, what we're doing is we're looking at the economy and asking whether our policy stance is the right one to achieve maximum employment and price stability. So I think if we would want to see further progress, but we think our as I mentioned, we think that our policy stance is restrictive, meaningfully restrictive, not highly restrictive, but meaningfully restrictive. And so I would think we need to see further progress. I wouldn't say all the way back down to 2% on a sustainable basis, although we'd love to see that, of course, and we will.
So the Fed doesn't need to see inflation coming back to 2% to cut interest rates. And Powell could have already cut interest rates if tariffs were not imposed. The tariffs causes and maintain great uncertainty in the markets. So the markets maybe are worried about this yet because the probabilities of a rate cut in the next Fed meeting is less than 10%. But when we see for the rest of the year, we can have 2 rate cuts. So the rate cut is near and will bring much more peace for the markets. And now let's see to the charts and see what the markets are showing us. But first, Trump did it again. Trump says the stock market is gonna go a lot higher. Last week, he said to buy stocks. And of course, stocks were up higher. We have a pump. And now Trump is saying us that the market is gonna go a lot higher. So we are about to have the next pump. Ryan Detrick is telling us more than 50% of the stocks in S&P 500 are now above the 200-day moving average. Looks like a big level and another reminder, we aren't going back to the new lows. And Kobe's letter posts, breaking S&P 500 officially turned positive on the year. So let's see the chart. S&P 500, last week we was talking about this trend line over here that was a resistance in price of S&P, and now just break out this resistance area. And this week what we have seen, we just seen a strong breakout of this resistance area. Let's remember, in the past this resistance area over here was a support. The price just don't fall down, but once it fall down, this becomes a resistance. But this week we just surpassed this resistance. It's a very strong breakout, which also aligns with the Fibonacci levels. If we put the Fibonacci levels here, what we can see, the level of 7.8. So this is a bullish momentum. And we can put in the chart of S&P the moving average. This red one is the 50 and the purple is the 200. And we can see here that in the past weeks we had death cross, but the price didn't see this death cross coming and just surpassed it, and signaling a shift in the market momentum. Now let's see the RSI. The RSI is pushing into overbought territory over here. So some short-term consolidation could happen, but for now, the bulls are clearly in control. As long price holds above this area over here, the next major target sits near the all-time high region around 6,200. Keep eye on the RSI divergence over here if it forms a divergence as potential warning signs, but the trend is strong. Let's see if the market has it takes to push towards new highs. But before we look at the Bitcoin chart, I invite you to Coinex. It's a very simple and easy platform. As the largest number of cryptos, values your privacy, and does not require KYC. Now let's talk about Bitcoin, and don't worry about today's price. Don't worry about the market falling down today. Big things are coming. Big things are being built in this market, and I will show you right now. But first, let's see what's happening in ETF, because we had a huge data. Last week, ETFs bought almost 10,000 Bitcoin, and we had 4 weeks in a row that ETFs are buying more than they are selling. And now Bitcoin ETFs has more than 1.1 million Bitcoin. So this is an impressive number. And we have here that Bitcoin spot ETF cumulative inflows reach all-time high. So we are facing this now. Interest in Bitcoin continues to grow, as shown not only by on-chain metrics, but also by record-breaking flows into spot Bitcoin ETFs. And we have an important message, a strong message from Coinbase institutional head of strategy, Don D'Agostino. Let's see.
The one important thing to remember about these ETF inflows, not just the surge we've seen recently, but since the beginning, because it's been an absolutely phenomenally performing ETF. And this is a very important point that's overlooked. This is being done with the asset managers not allowing their salespeople, their financial advisors, to recommend it. So that's extraordinary. That's like a shoe salesman not being able to recommend Nike, right? So that's going to change at some point. And I'll sort of leave it to your viewers to determine what happens when that thundering herd of brokers can actually pick up the phone and recommend this ETF.
Bitcoin ETFs, one of the best launches in history. And all this without the approval of the fund managers. And this is huge. It shows that despite of the conditions, Bitcoin continues to triumph. And the question is exactly what D'Agostino said. What will happen when they themselves start offering them? Let's move on because they are buying Bitcoin. El Salvador bought more Bitcoin today to add to their strategic reserve. So El Salvador keep pushing, buying Bitcoin. Who keep pushing? Every week is Sailor. Strategy has acquired 13,000 Bitcoin for more than $1 billion. And now they have more than 568,000 Bitcoin acquired for almost $40 billion. And let's see here that MicroStrategy has this amount of Bitcoin. And with profit, almost 50%, almost $20 billion just in profit of Bitcoin buys. And we can see in the charts that these orange dots means how much Bitcoin they have bought at that time. And now he's buying as much as they can, even if the price is higher. So the DCA Bitcoin strategy of MicroStrategy is now elevating his price, but they don't care. They keep push and buy Bitcoin. Let's see, because they are buying Bitcoin. Who is buying Bitcoin? The French company, the blockchain group, raised 12 million euros to buy Bitcoin. And we can see here, MetaPlanet issues $15 million in bonds to buy Bitcoin. They are following MicroStrategy playbook. And we can see here that another company has emerged. Nakamoto. Let's see here what means this Nakamoto. Nakamoto is a company that will buy Bitcoin for their reserves. And when it will be launched in the end of the month, next update at Bitcoin 2025 conference. So in the end of the month, we can see this company on air, but they are already doing these moves. Who is the owner of this company? David Bailey, CEO of Bitcoin Magazine. The goal is to run the MicroStrategy playbook in every country. We will see each of them of the Nakamoto balance sheet. Our Bitcoin yield will be a multiple on a multiple. Let's see that Bitcoin Magazine announced that its CEO David Bailey and holding company Nakamoto have raised $700 million and merged with healthcare data firm Kindly MD to establish a Bitcoin treasury-backed entity. So this is huge news too. And Jack Mallers 21 Capital, this is a new company too, and Tether buys more than 4,000 Bitcoin for almost $500 million. This is huge. This is a huge movement. So what we can see here, who is buying Bitcoin now? Companies. Companies are buying Bitcoin now. That's the most important thing that I want to tell you about Bitcoin in this news today, because it shifts the market. Corporations have become the biggest Bitcoin purchases in 2025, surpassing both ETFs and individual investors. So ETFs was huge, the biggest launch of all time. But we are seeing now that who is buying Bitcoin in the market? Who is buying? The companies are buying. And the price of Bitcoin is climbing up now more than $100,000 because of them. They are the buying pressure now. Who is selling Bitcoin? Individuals. Let's see in this chart over here. Individuals sold the most part of Bitcoin, and governments just buy a little one. ETFs bought almost 50K of Bitcoin, but companies bought 3 times more. I remember once when Sailor said that Bitcoin will be adopted by the people, by the companies, by the governments, and they all want to buy Bitcoin at once, like a Bitcoin gold rush, and it will be like until 2032 we will have a Bitcoin gold rush. Why? Today we have more than 90 million Bitcoin in circulation, and we know that only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist. So we have less than 5% of all Bitcoin circulation, and in the halving of 2032 we will have just 1% of all Bitcoin left to be mined. So now is the time to buy Bitcoin, and the companies, I think they just understand this game right now, and they are buying and buying as much as they can. Corporate Bitcoin purchases have now outweighed the supply of new Bitcoin by 3.3 times in 2025. So Bitcoin supply, as we know, Bitcoin, we can mine for 450 Bitcoin a day, and in these 5 months of the year we have more than 60,000 Bitcoin mined, but corporate holdings surpass almost 200,000 Bitcoin, so it's 3.3 times more. So the companies are buying Bitcoin while the individuals are selling, and I don't think this is a smart movement of the individuals. Hold your Bitcoin because they want Bitcoin. Of course, this is not an investment recommendation. Everyone knows their limits, but I'm going to hold as much as I can. Hold my Bitcoin. I have Bitcoin holding, but I have another part that I do trades with my dollars. I do trades. I buy Bitcoin, I sell Bitcoin, I buy altcoins too, and I don't care which kind of asset class I'm trading. I will do my trades. I love to do trades. I use Coinex to do that. But the holding, I just buy every day. I buy some Bitcoin, and once in a while I put on my wallet and I wait for the future. Let's see what the future holds for us that holds Bitcoin. So let's see the Bitcoin chart. We can see here we have a huge range. So in the past, this area over here was resistance, and we just skyrocketed after Trump won the election. But Bitcoin starts to melting down and retest this area over here. So I think we just surpassed the most difficult time of Bitcoin, and now we are up to see all-time high again. And now Bitcoin is in the area of all-time high. But let's start with our analysis here. First, we start this analysis with this falling wedge. For weeks, we are seeing this falling wedge. This trend line over here was a huge resistance for the price, but we break this resistance area and break this long-term resistance area of RSI. When this break here, we break here too. So this is a positive sign, a shift in momentum of Bitcoin. And what happened next? We have fixed range over here. This is the area that we have most negotiations, and the price of Bitcoin just stopped there. Resistance area over here. If we put the Fibonacci retracement, we can see this is the top and this is the low. So this retracement stops and this level 0.6 of Fibonacci, and this is aligned with the fixed range. So all this area over here was resistance, but the price of Bitcoin skyrocketed again and smashed through this barrier. So what we can see right now, price of Bitcoin is consolidating above the area of 0.78 of Fibonacci, but is still below the last resistance in price of Bitcoin. This is the historic top of Bitcoin, and the bears will try everything to bring the price down again. So this is a real battle of Bitcoin in this moment. Now let's see the RSI. For a long time, the momentum of RSI was bearish, but we just recovered and recovered very well. This is a strong movement of Bitcoin. Bitcoin just skyrocketed and RSI too. But now we see RSI in an area of exhaustion, and it's not a rule, but sometime we will have a correction, a short-term correction in price of Bitcoin. Might be in the next phase. We can see here divergence, and divergence show us very clearly when the price will turn to the other side. Let's see. Here we have a low, lower low, lower low. And here in our side we have low, lower high, lower high. So this is a divergence. We have different opposite movements. And when this come into the top, that might show us that the movement will turn to the other side. How we can see that in price of Bitcoin? So now we have this top over here. But if you do another top over this area over here, like do this kind of movement, we have a higher and a higher high. And in RSI, if the RSI do this movement over here, what can we see? A high and a higher low. So this is the divergence that can show us that the price probably will have a correction in a short term. And in a short term, now we are in a strong position of upside, but here show us that the movement might see some exhaustion and need to reset these parameters over here. Nothing to be worried like Bitcoin now is coming back to 60K. No, not like that. Just a small short-term correction. And if the price wants to correct, where we have support of Bitcoin, see, here we have the area of Fibonacci 61 of Fibo. This is an important area. So the price come back to this area over here, and the next movement could be all-time high again. And this area is so important that if we put the fixed hedge again, where is the POC, the point of control? Exactly in this area over here. So we have a strong support of RSI, of point of control from fixed range, and the price of Bitcoin here is a strong support. So the price of Bitcoin could hold over here for the next phase. And of course, if this area here don't hold as a support, we have the area of 92K that should be the most important area of support. Let's put now Fibonacci level, and this is it. Let's erase the old one. So here is the leg, and the correction on level 0.5 is an important level, is in this place over here, like 92K. Two areas of support, 96 and then 92K. But what if Bitcoin bulls could manage to break above this resistance area over here? The next logical target of Bitcoin will be $110,000. But now Bitcoin is in a critical moment. Price is in a decision point. What for either breakout of continuation or a short-term pullback. And that's it for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed as much as I am doing this video for you. See you in the next video.